When I started Fearless, my heart was just to encourage those to navigate their faith in a forever changing culture, to really have a fearless faith in a compromising culture. That when that moment to come to stand for truth or to stand with the world, that here would have been a resource that helped prepare you for that moment. Because in that moment, it will be fearful. It'll be a terrifying moment. Do I stand with God or to the cries of the world? And recently I was at an event with Alliance Defending Freedom, and I heard the story of Monica Gill. And here on Fearless, we've talked about our education system. We have talked about teachers and some of the radical things that they are teaching in our school systems. But I've been convicted and been very careful over time not to really bash all teachers, because there are so many wonderful teachers in our classroom who believe that is their mission field. Wonderful, godly teachers. I had them through my public school life growing up. But the story of Monica Gill is incredible. It has forever impacted me. So I've wanted you to hear Monica's story of how she had to decide as a teacher, was she going to stand for truth and be able to love on her children and students, or stand with the world? Well, thank you for joining me today on Fearless.
Thank you so much for having me. I really am honored to be here, like beyond belief. So thank you.
Well, and joining Monica is Tyson from Alliance Defending Freedom. He's senior counsel with ADF. We have talked about ADF multiple times here on Fearless. I can never speak more highly of Alliance Defending Freedom. Their wins are our wins. They are the best in what they do, protecting our religious liberties, our parental rights, marriage, the sanctity of life, and they win. And their wins are our wins. And I've often said, the work that they do and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association and Samaritan's Purse, they fit hand in glove. And Alliance Defending Freedom is so faithful of always keeping those doors open to share the gospel. And I pray that at Samaritan's Purse and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association that we're always faithful to go through that door. So we're thankful. And Monica, I'm excited that my listeners here at Fearless can hear your story, because it was impactful. It challenged me. I was in tears listening to your story. But you know well the importance of free speech, especially when it comes to the next generation as your role as a teacher. I believe you just celebrated your 30th anniversary of teaching. That's a long time.
I know.
What grade do you teach?
So currently I'm teaching 12th grade. I've been teaching just 12th grade for a while, and I teach AP Government. That's not a controversial topic at all. But I've taught in the 30 years pretty much everything in social studies between 9th and 12th grade. But I'm kind of in my sweet spot right now. I really like seniors.
And that's a special calling. And you do view this is your mission field, and we're going to get to that. Not everybody is called to teach 12th graders. But share with us what led you into teaching in the first place, especially in a public school system.
Sure. So, I came up in the public school system, and it was, always a pretty good place to be as far as I was concerned when I was a kid. I was somebody who always really liked school. I think I always kind of knew that I wanted to be a teacher. I used to play school with my little brothers and actually make them do work and grade it. So unfortunately for them, I think that's why they didn't like school so much. But throughout my years in school, I really was kind of a quiet kid. I flew under the radar a lot, but there were a few teachers who saw me when other people weren't, when my peers weren't, when teachers weren't. They saw me and they saw something in me, and they really took me under wing and mentored me and just impacted my life in beautiful ways. And as I came up through high school, I decided, this is really, I think, where I am supposed to be. And so I embarked on the teaching career, and the Lord spoke to my heart very early on that, yes, I was going to be a teacher, but that wasn't really my main calling, that this was my mission field. My number one mission was to love on these kids, to give them unconditional love where they might not see it. And really, like, if they learn government or history, great, that's secondary. But the number one thing for me to do was to just love them unconditionally, and for them to know that they are loved unconditionally.
It sounds easy, but I know in a public school system that might be more difficult than it sounds. What are some creative and concrete ways that on an everyday basis you would let a kid know that they are loved?
I actually do tell my students that I love them all the time, every day. They walk into my classroom. I say, Mrs. Gill loves you. How are you doing today? When they leave my classroom, I say, goodbye, Mrs. Gill loves you. There is actually a stenciled sign over the threshold of my door that says you are loved with hearts around it. So when they come in and out, they see that. I have actually, quotes on my walls about love as well. I write on all of their tests and quizzes, good luck, Mrs. Gill loves you. When I can speak with them through text messages, send them mass text messages, and I always end it with, Mrs. Gill loves you. I put a bonus question on every quiz and every test that says, Mrs. Gill loves me, A, true, B, false. And they have to put true to get, the bonus point for it. So I think at the beginning of the year, they sort of think that it's cute. But when we get to the end of the year, I think once we have built relationship and rapport with each other, they see that I'm not just saying it, that I really do mean it, that I really do love them.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what do 12th graders say behind your back, or roll their eyes and laugh? And because it's even with 12th graders, when their parents tell them they love you, sometimes they roll their eyes at you.
It's funny. It's a lot of kids. I have 150 some kids every year. And there are clearly kids who are, a little bit uncomfortable, like, what? But over time, they realize that it's true. And then, there are a lot of kids who are just like, oh, and I've actually, there was a couple of years ago where I said, I'm just going to put a bonus question on this quiz, and I'm going to ask kids to tell me why I tell them that I love them. So the question was, why does Mrs. Gill tell you that she loves you? And the responses that I got to see were just, they just warmed my heart. I mean, some of them said things like, oh, well, she tells us that she loves us because, she wants us to do well in her class, or because we're so cool, or because, we're so fun. But some of them wrote things like, Mrs. Gill tells us that she loves us because she knows everybody needs to hear at least once in their day that somebody loves them. Mrs. Gill tells us that she loves us because she knows that, we need to hear it. One kid one year wrote, Mrs. Gill tells me that she loves me to make up for my parents' lack of love. And I knew that kid's situation. It was like heartbreaking, but also confirmation from the Lord that what I'm doing and loving these kids unconditionally every day, even when it's hard, is really important.
You definitely are a wonderful example of what teachers should be, especially when so many negative and bad teachers are kind of getting the highlight over the last few years, and those stories really coming out of classrooms. But to be able to see a teacher that knows this is her mission that God has called her to, and that God gives us ways to fulfill that mission in creative ways. But you do live and you work, or I don't know if you live there, but you work in Loudoun County, Virginia. We have talked about Loudoun County many times here. Your pastor has been on Fearless multiple times, and we've talked about how that has been ground zero for so much going on into our culture right now in Loudoun County. But it is one of the most liberal school districts in the nation. And so you've had some opportunities to kind of flex those muscles of truth. Mm-hmm. You've fought against several harmful policies that the school district has considered, including sexually explicit materials and DEI. And most recently, after, I've heard your story, you really wrestled with God on this. You decided to take a stand against the school's secret transition policy, a policy that told teachers they had to lie to parents about their children, keeping from the parents if the school was calling their daughter a boy name using male pronouns, for an example. And when I was at the Alliance Defending Freedom event, there was a mom sharing her story of how this had happened to her, that her daughter, that it was by accident that she got some material from the school and it had a boy's name on it. And she just thought the school made a mistake and gave her the wrong paperwork. And they realized the school had been doing this behind her back. And it is something we're seeing, even the President of the United States has recently addressed this. And it's something we're seeing more often, which is scary to hear. But tell us, how did this conflict arise, and how did you know that that it was time that you needed to do something?
Yeah. So as you said, I started out really kind of challenging at school board meetings the sexually explicit materials in schools, in the libraries, and then challenging the DEI things, especially things that I was seeing in the trainings that we were doing. And there was one training in particular where I was sitting next to a colleague, and they showed us this video called The Race. And essentially, in this video, it's got Black kids and white kids running a race. And they, the Black kids have every disadvantage, and the white kids are just doing laps around them. And as I'm sitting there and looking at my colleague, she just starts crying. And she's a sister in Christ. And I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "That video and this entire discussion is completely belittling my being a white single mom, taking care of 4 kids, not having the money to take care of them. My kids were the kids whose names were on the angel tree because I could not afford to buy them presents." And the Lord just put this fire in my belly at that moment. I have been angry before, but I had never felt righteous anger before. And I think I was just overcome. And the Lord just put this fire in my belly, and I was like, this is just wrong. All of this is wrong. And so I started to speak up against the DEI. And at the same time, I had friends and colleagues who were talking against the transgender policies. And I was a little afraid to take that one on. I'll be honest. It was, because the vitriol toward anyone who would speak against the transgender policies, it was just so heavy. But in the midst of speaking out about the DEI things, I had colleagues who would come to me very quietly, and they would say, "Oh my gosh, thank you for speaking up. You're so brave. I could never do what you're doing. I can't afford to lose my job." And my response was always, well, I mean, I can't afford to lose my job either. But I also cannot imagine standing before my Father in heaven and saying to him, my pension plan was more important than your truth. And as I thought about that and wrestled with that, I realized that if I'm going to stand for the Lord and for his truth, that means that I have to stand for it in everything, not just, siloed compartments of things to fight against, but I've got to stand for it all and fight against all of it. And so that's when I decided, all right, this is part of the spiritual warfare that's going on in our school too. And it's maybe even more important than the DEI and the sexually explicit material, because this comes right down to the truth of who God designed us to be. And so I took it on. I felt like a David in front of Goliath, and I had, no stones in my sling. And I've said to Tyson and my attorneys any number of times, that's what I felt like. And then all of a sudden, ADF came along, and they were the stones in my sling. And, we've just been aiming for Goliath's head ever since then. And it's incredible, when I made the decision to be obedient to that, the Lord just provided me with not just removing all of that fear, but every resource that I need to have ADF come alongside me and give me every resource, every support that I needed to fight this fight. I couldn't do it without them.
Wow. I love that. The stones in your sling. And it is, God just calls us to obedience, right? And we have to step out in faith, and he will provide, even in the most fearful situations. Tyson, tell us about the lawsuit that Alliance Defending Freedom filed, and where is that now?
Yeah, so we're still in discovery. As Monica said, the school district adopted this policy several years ago, and the policy does a number of things that are problematic, one of which forces teachers like Monica to say things that are untrue to their students. It forces them to refer to a girl as a boy, and potentially to deceive parents if the parents aren't supportive of that. And that's wrong and harmful to students, and so we challenged that, and it's been pending for several years for various reasons. But we're actually set to go to trial this summer if we don't get it resolved before then.
And how does Alliance Defending Freedom come alongside other school teachers? How is this encouraging? I believe you have some resources for teachers in school districts.
So this issue, unfortunately, is not just in Loudoun. It's across the country. These are the same types of policies we're seeing everywhere. And we've represented a number of school teachers in other districts. And thankfully, we just resolved one earlier this year for a teacher in Ohio that was actually terminated for not wanting to refer to two middle school girls as boys. And so we will potentially stand alongside teachers who are faced with termination or who actually get terminated. But then we also, try to help them with getting accommodations. And that's all Monica's seeking here is just the accommodation. She's saying, look, you can have your policy, just don't make me say something that's untrue. I'm happy to, treat this student as I treat everybody else. I just don't want to say something untrue. So just don't make me do that. And so what we do is we help a lot of these teachers actually get an accommodation under their policy. And thankfully, there has been a lot of school districts that are willing to provide accommodations because there's, we can live in the society and we can deal with difficult issues without forcing people to say things that go against their deeply held beliefs. There's no reason for the government that needs to do that. And there's a perfectly reasonable accommodation that Loudoun could give Monica if they chose to do so, but they've dug their heels in for 3 years and have been unwilling to do so.
Well, Loudoun County's definitely kept y'all really busy there at ADF over the years. Monica, what has been the response like when this happened and you're getting ready to walk back into your school after making this decision to file a lawsuit? What has been the response from maybe other teachers, your students, or parents?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a mixed bag, right? I mean, there has certainly been parents and students and other teachers who have given support and said, thank you for being courageous and standing up. I think I'm most touched by the students who have come to me over the years and said, thank you for taking this stand for us. And I think it's because they realize that their generation is in a real spiritual battle and they are just being decimated by these terrible ideologies. So they're thankful, and that's beautiful. But not everybody loves it. I mean, I've had my fair share of the onslaught of, hate mail and, notes and things like that. And I've had students who weren't happy about it either. And I think ultimately in this situation where you've got kids who are in my class who are unhappy about it, that is really where the rubber meets the road, right? And for us to really win this battle, it's not just about taking the fight out, in the courtroom or even in the court of public appeal. To win this, we really need to be aiming at the hearts of individuals. So the Lord has given me so many opportunities to, in the midst of conflict over any number of things from, DEI to the transgender policy, to just speak into the lives of my students who disagree with me in a way that has really been able to be beautiful and truthful, but gracious and gentle. And I have so many examples, but I'll just give you one story that really touches my heart. A couple of years ago, right, when I was just in the midst of getting in the middle of the court case, I was very upfront in the news, very out there. People knew exactly who I was, where I taught, what my stand was. And right before school started, I got an email from a young lady who said, basically the tenor of her email was, I don't like you. I don't like the things that I see you saying in the news. I don't like your stand on things. You don't understand people of color or the LGBTQ community. And basically our culture is toxic. You're part of it. And expressing that she did not want to be in my class. But of course, they don't let kids just change their schedule because they don't like a teacher. So I got that email and I just sat and I just prayed. I said, Lord, what am I going to do? Because this young lady is going to be in my class for the next 10 months. And I want to do this well. And I want to comport myself well as your follower and with your love. So I decided to send her a response. And I just said, look, I appreciate everything that you've said to me. I thank you for sharing it with me. I'm just going to ask you to for right now, set aside any prejudgments that you have about me or my positions on things, and just know that for this year in school, I only have two goals. Number one is to love and respect you. And number two is to hopefully teach you some history in a way that will be fun and memorable. So I sent that and I didn't get a response, which was fine, but I made a decision the first day of school. I was going to put her in a seat right up next to my desk, and I was going to pursue a relationship with her. And it was hard. It was really, really awkward and uncomfortable at first because, I knew how she felt about me, and it was, but the Lord kept pressing me to say, look, this is your opportunity to live out my gospel and to love this young lady. And I love her. So I want you to love her. So I just kept pressing forward in talking to her and, building a relationship with her. We'd talk about her weekend. She'd show me, prom pictures and homecoming pictures. And so eventually it got from being really awkward and forced to being very natural and a very lovely relationship. And we had a beautiful rapport by the end of the school year. And that year, again, was the year I was kind of like, right, my face was out there. Everybody knew who I was and what I stood for. And we got to May 1st. And that first week of May is always Teacher Appreciation Week. And typically, in any given year, I would get lots of notes and cards and, Starbucks gift cards flooded on my desk and in my mailbox. And that year was like nothing the entire week. And it was like, okay, Lord, as much as that might hurt my heart a little, that's okay, because we work for the praise of you, not for the praise of men. And I got to the end of that week, and Friday I was like on my way out the door, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just pop by my mailbox real quick and see if there's anything I need to attend to in there. So I went by, and there was one card in my mailbox, and it was from this young lady. And she said, Mrs. Gill, you really are a great teacher, and I'm really glad that I had you this year. And I hope that I get to have you again next year. And I took that home and I put it in front of my husband, and he read it and he looked up at me and he said, Monica, there is a reason that this is the only card you got this year. Because if you had been flooded with all of that love from, tons of kids, this message would have been lost. And the Lord wants you to know that the relationships that you're building with kids matter. And so if we're gonna change this situation, it's not just about, it is about the big things, but it's also about sowing relationships with people in their hearts and letting them see that God is good, Christ is good through our witness and our loving on them. And I ended up having her a second year, her senior year as well. I wrote her college recommendation letter. I cheered for her when she walked across the stage for graduation. And I think that's really what it's all about. It's just these opportunities to show love to people, but stand firm in what is true about what God says about who we are.
And I think one thing I remind my listeners all the time, and it was one of the reasons I started this, and that's why your story has reminded me that, is Jesus Christ was 100% grace and he was 100% truth. We can stand for his truth without compromising it in this culture, while we can still love those around us. And I think, of course, I think we have compromised on the gospel through love, second grace, to love those. And therefore, in our actions to quote unquote love the way the world would tell us to, we've compromised the gospel. And you set that example. You have lived it out to where you have not compromised. You've 100% stood on truth, but love those around you. And every day my kids get out of the car, I remind them, be kind to those who are unkind, because you never know where that will lead you with a relationship with them. I remember you shared a story with your principal. What has your relationship with your principal been through this? Because that's had to be, I would assume, difficult.
So, interestingly enough, I would say I expected it to be really difficult in terms of my relationship with her at first, but it really wasn't. We've always had a pretty good relationship and respect for each other and a good rapport with each other. And when this all started, which it really started with like the first article that I wrote about DEI that went viral, that I wrote for the Federalist. And that was a big wow, because, after I wrote that and just the onslaught of, emails and attention, and it was a little overwhelming. And I remember walking around my backyard with my dog that night and just praying and being completely overwhelmed. It's just like, Lord, I didn't think that this is what we were going to do with my life, but okay, whatever. I promise you that whatever door you open for me, I will walk through it. Whatever opportunity you give me, I will walk through it. I just ask you, Lord, to please protect me and protect my family. And the next day I went into work and she called me into her office to talk about it. And her first question was, I just want to know if you're okay, because I can't imagine it must be overwhelming. And I said, yeah, I am okay. And she said, well, the next thing I want you to know is that I read your article. I read it like 4 times. You gave me a lot to think about. And after I read it, I went in person. I drove over to the admin building and I walked into the HR department, to the head of HR, and I told them they better not touch you. And she said, you have every right. You have the freedom of speech. You have every right to say the things that you have said. And I am here to protect you. She said those exact words. And when I heard that, and I had just prayed, Lord, please just protect us. It was just a confirmation that he was going to be there to protect us. And he had placed my principal in this place to do it. And she has been beautiful. Last year was a little bit of a rough year. I was in the principal's office a lot last year. But, she was there every time to support me, to sit down with me with parents or students, and to just have those conversations, to stand in truth and love. And every single one of them resolved beautifully. So, it has been a wonderful journey, and I'm so thankful for her.
Yeah. And to those who are listening, probably an unexpected protector. Different lifestyles, different beliefs, different ideologies you two have. Maybe probably different on the political sides, but she became your protector. And I think God tells us he is our protector and that he'll protect us, and maybe sometimes even in the least expected ways, to see his protection. With everything going on in public schools right now, some teachers all get lumped into the same category, but there's so many teachers out there like Monica who are trying to stand up for kids against many of these dangerous policies. How has ADF coming alongside teachers, and what are some of the resources available for teachers witnessing what's going on and the consideration of these harmful policies, who really want to take a stand for their students and to tell them, to speak truth into their lives?
Yeah. Well, frankly, one of the best resources we have as Americans is the First Amendment. We have strong protections still for speakers. Even when you're a public school teacher, there are still very strong protections, and which is why we've been able to push back against some of those policies. And we need to be thankful for that and not take that for granted, because when you look across the world, we've got ADF International, and the countries that we view as our peers, our Western democracies, they don't have these protections. So I think people need to understand they have greater protection than what they think. And secondly, there's organizations like ADF who are able to represent them for free if their rights are violated. And so just knowing that there are resources, and don't capitulate just because of, you're fearful that, that you don't have the resources, because there are those resources out there. And we've got some written resources on our website that you can go that talk to teachers specifically and tell them what their rights are as teachers. Many teachers are also parents. They have students in the school, and they're like, what are my rights as a parent? We've got resources for were, people who were asking those questions about what rights do I have to opt my children out of certain teaching, or, if a school is trying to transition my child against my will, those kind of things. So I think those are all great resources that will, help in those times of need. But I think what Monica has demonstrated, and the reason I love that I have the opportunity to represent Monica, is because I think the things that she utilizes the most, that have been most impactful in her story, are, one, courage. Just the willingness to stand. That's really what every teacher is going to need. They're going to have courage, and two, they're going to have the love of Christ, right? To be motivated by love, not motivated to be right, but be motivated by love. The knowing that we have the truth and that people need the truth, and then being willing to wade into discomfort, right? You're going to have to wade into discomfort. It was uncomfortable for Monica to say, I'm going to try to develop this relationship with this student who has just told me they don't want a relationship with me. They don't like me. They don't like what I believe. But because she did, God honored that. And so those are the things that teachers are going to need the most, is just courage to wade into the discomfort and to speak the truth, and then to utilize resources like ADF when those things, if something does come of it. But many, many times, most of the people I talk to, most of the teachers I talk to, it doesn't end up in court. You don't have to end up in court. The goal is not to end up in court. I don't want to have to sue on behalf of Monica. I want her to be able to do her job without going to court, right? That's our goal. Our goal is not to file lawsuits. Is to allow teachers to do the job that they were called to do, which is to minister and educate to the next generation.
Yeah. And you reminded me of my grandfather's quote. He says, the courage of one will stiffen the spines of others. Mm-hmm. And Monica, you taking a stand alongside with ADF, coming on and helping, giving you the resources and being those stones in your sling, that has been an encouragement to other teachers to have courage that they can do this. And that they have those rights and those toolkits that you mentioned, Tyson. I believe they can find the educator's toolkit on your website at Alliance Defending Freedom. Monica, we haven't even mentioned, and my apologies for not mentioning, you are a mom. Mm-hmm. And you have a daughter in high school who just has grown up the last couple of years seeing you fight this fight. What do you hope she learns from this, what she sees from it, and when you're standing for truth?
My answer is Jesus, right? Jesus is the answer. He is always the answer. And my hope is that what she will see as she's watching me fight, and my husband alongside me, and that she stood there with me too, is that Jesus is good, and he is our protector. As I said earlier, I couldn't believe when I heard my principal say those words, I'm here to protect you. And then the Lord sent ADF, and just so many ways that I have been protected in the midst of this fight, and that she would see that when you are obedient, you will be blessed and you will be protected. And, I pray that legacy will fall on her, and that she will own that, and that she too will be fearless and courageous and stand in truth and love. So yeah, and she is a great kid. So I look forward to seeing what the Lord's going to do with her.
During this journey, before we close, has there ever been a moment where you wanted to give up, where you're like, Lord, why do this? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to walk through this classroom anymore and fight this fight. I'm too tired. Have you had those moments?
Yes, definitely. Anytime you're, taking these kind of stands and in this kind of battle, it gets hard. And, I firmly believe that, the Lord is there for us in the midst of those hard moments. But I have definitely had moments where I was just like, ugh, this is just rough. It was a few years ago, I had one that really stands out. I had closed out the previous school year having 3 students who all were going through the transition process, all 3 girls. And it was just heartbreaking to watch as they were going through that process, and to see that it wasn't making them better. Their mental health was declining. It it was a really rough, it was just rough and heartbreaking to watch these beautiful, intelligent young women just be decimated by this spiritual warfare. And the school environment just felt so heavy and so dark. I mean, it really is. This isn't just a political battle or a cultural battle or a court battle. I mean, this is real spiritual warfare that is taking hold of our kids. And so as I was starting the new school year, I had just been moved into a new classroom, and my heart was so heavy, Cissie. It was so heavy. And I was cleaning this new classroom, and I was just praying and saying, Lord, I am tired. This hurts too much. It's heartbreaking. I just don't want to do this anymore. And as I was cleaning the classroom, I was cleaning this bookshelf off, and I got to the bottom shelf, and I found this hard-bound book, and I picked it up, and I dusted it off, and I read the cover says Holy Bible. And I looked at it, and I was like, what are you doing here? And then I opened it, and on the inside, in just like this really beautiful penmanship, it says presented by senior class of 1955. And I was blown away. Like, this Bible had been a gift. Can you imagine that? That a senior class today would gift Bibles as their senior gift to their high school. And I thought, my cynicism kind of hit immediately. It was like, oh, look at how far we've fallen. You would never see anything like this today. But then the Lord just got a hold of my heart, and he just said to me, Monica, I didn't give you this gift for you to judge this place. I gave you this gift so that you would know I have not abandoned this place. And I have placed you here for this time to be my salt, to be my light. And I'm asking you to stand and to stay. Wherever you are, Jill Briscoe used to say, wherever you are, your mission field is right between your own 2 feet. And this is your mission field. And after that moment, I just said, okay, Lord, no matter how hard it is, I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay for you, and I'm going to love these kids through however dark all of this is. And I have stayed, and I'm going to tell you, we have been trying to push God out of the public sector for decades. We have been trying to push him out, and he just made it very clear, like, you can't push me out. I am here. He is standing in our courthouses, in our legislatures, in our, governor's mansions, in our White House, in our public schools. And he is asking us, please stand with me and say, this is the way, this is the truth, this is what is right. And I have been honored to do it ever since.
And on top of that, I think we have a generation that's eager to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
They've been lied to, heart-wrenching. I can't imagine watching those 3 girls in your classroom and witnessing that, but they're eager to hear truth. And I've learned that. God taught me that just last year, and with a relationship with somebody I had, and her and I, once again, complete polar opposites. If you're a judge, and I just would kind of try to get my foot in the door with small little things. And one day I was like, I'm really going to go for it. And I just said something kind of bold. And she goes, you know what? You're right. And then she started asking me all these questions, and I just couldn't believe it. And my takeaway from that moment was Satan has lied to us to keep silent. Mm-hmm. And there is a world that, yes, some of them might disagree with us. Some of them might hate us if we speak truth, but there are some that are eager to hear it, and they want to hear it, and they need to hear it. And God commands us in the Great Commission to go and to speak. And it's not even just through our actions or through love, but it's through the words we speak. And our words carry power. And I can't imagine you telling a child that you love them and saying that's lacking what they are hearing in their home. So, Monica, I want to say thank you. I'm so excited I get to meet you via screen
Yes.
because your story was so powerful to hear the first time, and even more powerful the second. And a great reminder. And one last question I have is, maybe people haven't found themselves in that moment where they're going to have to choose to stand for truth.
Yeah.
And maybe some people are in the midst of that storm. What would you say? How would you prepare someone's heart for a storm that might come where they're going to have to decide, am I going to stand with Christ or stand with the world?
And I think it goes, every heart is going to have this their question like this individually, but it goes back to the question that I asked myself, like, can I stand before the Lord and say my pension plan was more important than your truth? And maybe it's not their pension plan. Maybe it's something else that fills in that blank. But whatever it is, the things of this world are of no value in comparison to the things of heaven and the treasure in heaven. And so, how can you look at your Savior on the cross and not be willing to lay down your life for him, knowing when he asks you to be fearless, to be courageous, to be bold, to stand for his truth, to sacrifice for him? How can you look at him and not say yes, knowing that he is not asking you to do anything that he didn't already do? And I would just say that is always the thought in my mind. Like, when the Lord is asking me to do something, is he asking me to do something that he wasn't already willing to do for me? Nope. I got to do it.
Monica, thank you. Thank you for being obedient to what God has called you to do. And what a great reminder. Tyson, thank you to Alliance Defending Freedom and coming and standing alongside and strengthening people like Monica. I know there might be days y'all grow weary because your inbox is probably so full every single day, the requests that Alliance Defending Freedom gets, but we are so grateful. And for those who are listening, I would encourage you to go to Alliance Defending Freedom's website so you are aware and you can see what they have been doing. Stories like Monica's is a wonderful website, and to teach you why these issues are important. And like Tyson said, they do have a teacher's toolkit and I believe a parent's toolkit on their website available for you. Monica and Tyson, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me and for having us.
Thank you so much.
If you're listening right now, you can't see, but I'm sitting here in my office, as I often do, with my copy of Decision Magazine. For years, I've used Decision to help me stay informed with key cultural and biblical issues. I even use it to help me prepare for this podcast sometimes. If you aren't yet receiving a copy of Decision Magazine, I would love to invite you to subscribe today. I know it will be a help to you to help stay informed on the important topics of our time. You can go to decisionmagazine.com to subscribe today.